I died twice in my lifetime. The first time was on paper. A life insurance policy worth $2 million with my death date left blank, just waiting for my husband to fill it in. The second time was in his will. I read my own obituary there, written in legal language. To my wife, Evelyn Marie Hartwell, I leave nothing. She has taken enough. 43 years of marriage, and I'd been erased with a single sentence. But here's what Richard didn't know. Dead women tell no tales, but living women who've been left to dead, we have plenty to say. My name is Evelyn Hartwell. I'm 68 years old. And this is the story of how I came back from the grave to bury the man who tried to put me there. It started the way most betrayals do, with something small and insignificant. A Tuesday morning in March, spring rain tapping against the kitchen window. I was making Richard's coffee exactly the way he liked it. 2 sugars, a splash of cream, served in the blue ceramic mug our daughter Julia had made in high school art class 20 years ago. His phone buzzed on the counter. He was upstairs in the shower. The screen lit up with a calendar notification. Estate attorney, 2 p.m. Bring updated beneficiary docs. I stared at it. Estate attorney? We'd finalized our estate plan 5 years ago. What needed updating? The notification disappeared. I heard the shower turn off upstairs. Richard came down 10 minutes later in his charcoal suit, the one I'd pressed the night before. At 67, he still cut a distinguished figure. Silver hair, sharp jawline, the kind of man who commanded attention in boardrooms. "Morning, Evie," he said, kissing my forehead. Mechanical, obligatory. "Your briefcase is by the door," I said casually. "Big day today?" "Just the usual meetings," he said, picking up his coffee. I watched him leave at 7:30. The moment his car disappeared around the corner, I went to his briefcase. I wasn't snooping, at least that's what I told myself, but that calendar notification had planted a seed of unease I couldn't shake. Inside the briefcase, I found a manila folder. Inside were 3 documents that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my life. 1, a life insurance policy dated 8 months prior. Insured, Evelyn Marie Hartwell. Benefit, $2 million. Sole beneficiary, Richard James Hartwell. 2, a property deed for a condo in Harbor Point, a luxury development I'd never heard of. Owner, Richard J. Hartwell and Natalie R. Corso. Purchase date, 14 months ago. 3, a handwritten note on Summit Pharmaceuticals letterhead. Ease medications, dosage increase, confirm with N. Timeline, anniversary weekend. Make it look natural. My hands didn't shake. That's what I remember most clearly. I stood there in my kitchen, in the house where I'd raised 2 children and hosted countless dinners and folded 43 years worth of laundry, and my hands were perfectly steady. I photographed every page with my phone, replaced the folder exactly as I'd found it, closed the briefcase with a soft click. Then I sat down at the kitchen table and thought about my daughter Julia's words from 3 months ago. "Mom, you look tired these days. Are you feeling okay?" I'd been tired. Exhausted, actually. Brain fog, dizziness, nausea that came in waves. My doctor said it was just age, maybe early menopause symptoms lingering. He'd increased my blood pressure medication. Richard had picked up the new prescription for me. Richard, who'd been so attentive lately, so concerned, bringing me pills with my morning coffee, making sure I took them with food. Richard, who'd taken out a $2 million life insurance policy on me. I looked at the note again. Ease medications, dosage increase. And then I understood. My husband wasn't just planning to leave me. He was planning to kill me. Before I go further, you need to understand who I was. My maiden name was Evelyn Porter. I grew up in South Boston, the daughter of a machinist and a school secretary. I put myself through Boston College on scholarships and weekend shifts at a diner, graduated summa cum laude with a degree in accounting, and landed a job at Morrison & Associates, one of the city's top forensic accounting firms. I was good at my job. Exceptional, actually. I could look at a ledger and see the story underneath the numbers, where money came from, where it went, and more importantly, where it was hiding. I helped expose embezzlement schemes, Ponzi operations, corporate fraud. I testified as an expert witness in federal court twice before I turned 30. That's where I met Richard. He was a pharmaceutical sales rep whose company was under investigation for kickback schemes. I was brought in to audit their books. Richard wasn't involved in the fraud. He was actually the one who'd reported suspicious activity to management. He was the good guy, the whistleblower, the man with integrity. We started dating 3 weeks after the case closed. He was charming, ambitious, and he looked at me like I was the most fascinating person he'd ever met. "You have this incredible mind," he'd say. "You see things other people miss." 6 months later, he proposed. We married in a small ceremony at St. Catherine's Church with white lilies and my mother's pearl necklace. I was 21. He was 24. We had our son David 2 years later. Julia came 3 years after that. And somewhere in those early years of diapers and daycare and Richard's climbing career, I made a choice. Or maybe it was made for me, I'm still not sure. Richard said, "The kids need you home. I'm traveling so much for work. It wouldn't be fair to them." I said, "But I love my job." He said, "I know, but they love you more. And honestly, Evie, with my salary now, we don't need the money. Why not take a break? You can always go back later." Later never came. By the time Julia started kindergarten, I'd been out of the workforce for 8 years. My professional contacts had moved on, my certifications had lapsed, and Richard was making VP level money, covering our mortgage, the kids' private school tuition, the family vacations to Hilton Head. I became a stay-at-home mother, then a volunteer at the kids' schools, then the president of the garden club, then just Richard's wife. I didn't mind. At least I told myself I didn't. I had a good life. A beautiful home in Maple Ridge with 4 bedrooms and a yard where David and Julia built forts and caught fireflies. I had book club on Tuesdays and tennis on Thursdays. Richard kissed me goodbye every morning and came home every night. It was comfortable, stable, safe. Until the morning I found out it was all built on a foundation of lies. On that same day, around 10:47 a.m., I called my daughter first. Julia answered on the second ring. "Mom, what's wrong?" That's the thing about mothers and daughters. They can hear crisis in a single syllable. "I need to see you," I said. "Can you come to the house?" "I'm at the hospital, but I can leave. Are you okay? Is it Dad?" Julia is a trauma surgeon at Mass General, 38 years old, divorced, no children by choice. She has my dark hair and Richard's sharp features and a mind like a steel trap. "I'm fine. Your father's fine. Just please come." She arrived 40 minutes later, still in her scrubs, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She found me sitting at the kitchen table with my printed copies of the documents spread out in front of me. "Mom, what's all this?" I handed her the life insurance policy first, watched her face as she read. $2 million, her voice was flat. "With Dad as the only beneficiary?" "Keep reading." She picked up the property deed, the handwritten note. Her expression shifted from confusion to comprehension to something I'd never seen on my daughter's face before. Pure, incandescent rage. "That son of a bitch," she whispered. "That absolute son of a bitch. I need your help, and I need you to call your brother." 2 hours later, my son, David, arrived. He is 40 years old, a partner at Chin & Associates, one of Boston's most aggressive litigation firms. He has Richard's build, tall, broad-shouldered, but my temperament. Careful, methodical, patient. He'd gotten married last fall to Michelle, a kind, soft-spoken librarian who made him genuinely happy. They were still in that honeymoon phase where everything felt possible. I hated that what I was about to tell him would shatter that innocence. He walked in, still in his suit from court, and said, "Mom, what's going on? Julia said it was an emergency." I showed him everything. David read in silence. When he finished, he set the papers down carefully, removed his glasses, and pinched the bridge of his nose exactly the way he used to do when he was studying for finals in law school. "Okay," he said finally. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. This is what I mean when I say I raised good children. They didn't waste time on disbelief or denial. They didn't say, 'Are you sure? Maybe there's an explanation.' They knew their father, and they believed me." Julia spoke first. "The note mentions your medications. What are you taking?" "Blood pressure medication, Lisinopril. The doctor increased my dosage 3 months ago because my readings were high." "Who picks up your prescriptions?" "Your father. He goes to the pharmacy on his way home from work." David and Julia exchanged a look. "We need to test those pills," Julia said. "I can run them through the lab at the hospital. If he's been tampering with them, increasing the dosage or adding something else, it'll show up." "And we need to figure out who Natalie Corso is," David added. "The property deed lists her as co-owner. That's not just an affair. That's financial entanglement." I took a breath. I told them there's more. I told them about Richard's meeting with the estate attorney, about how secretive he'd been lately, about the phone calls he'd taken the car with the doors closed. He's updated his will, David said. It wasn't a question. I'd bet everything I own that he's written you out of it and left everything to this woman. Can we get a copy, I asked. Not unless he's filed it with the probate court, which he probably hasn't. But David smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. I know someone in estate planning at Dad's attorney's office. Let me make a call. 3 days later, David came to my house with a document that made my hands shake for the first time since this nightmare began. "He shouldn't have this," he said, setting it on the kitchen table. "And if anyone asks, you didn't get it from me, but I thought you deserved to know." It was Richard's will, updated 6 weeks ago. I read it slowly. Once, twice, 3 times, because surely I was misunderstanding, but I wasn't. Last will and testament of Richard James Hartwell. "To my wife, Evelyn Marie Hartwell, I leave nothing. She has taken enough. To my children, David and Julia Hartwell, I leave nothing. They have never understood or supported my choices. To Natalie Rose Corso, the love of my life and my true partner, I leave the entirety of my estate, including but not limited to all real property, financial accounts, investment portfolios, retirement accounts, and personal effects. She alone has brought me happiness in my final years." I read that line again. "She alone has brought me happiness in my final years." Final years. As if he was dying, as if he was the victim. Julia, reading over my shoulder, made a sound like she'd been punched. David said quietly, "He's worth approximately $4 million. The house is paid off. That's another $800,000. His retirement accounts are around $1.2 million, plus the life insurance payout if something happened to you. He's leaving everything to his mistress, and he's planning to kill our mother to make sure she gets it all." We sat in silence. Then David said, "We're not going to let that happen. The puzzle remains. Who is Natalie Corso?" This is the part where I hired the private investigator. Her name was Sharon Baptiste, a former FBI agent who now ran a small firm out of a nondescript office in Cambridge. David had worked with her on corporate cases. She was expensive, discreet, and ruthless. She said, "Tell me everything." I did. The life insurance policy, the property deed, the medications, the will, the note about making it look natural on our anniversary weekend, which was now exactly 3 weeks away. Sharon listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Your husband is planning to murder you. You understand that, right? This isn't paranoia or a misunderstanding. He has means, motive, and a clear timeline." "I understand." "Good. Then let's figure out who he's working with." Within 48 hours, Sharon had a full dossier on Natalie Rose Corso. Age 42. Occupation, Senior Strategic Analyst at Biogenics Pharmaceuticals. Background, MBA from Wharton. Previous positions in corporate intelligence and business consulting, which Sharon noted was often code for industrial espionage. Marital status, divorced, no children. Criminal record, none. Financial profile, extremely comfortable. six-figure salary, investment properties, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Now here's where it gets interesting, Sharon said, spreading photographs across her desk. Natalie doesn't just work for Biogenics, she's their hatchet woman. When they want inside information on a competitor, they send her in. Summit Pharmaceuticals, I said. Richard's company. Exactly. Biogenics and Summit have been in a bidding war over a new oncology drug for the past 2 years. It's worth potentially billions, and according to my sources, someone at Summit has been leaking proprietary information to Biogenics. She showed me a photograph of Richard and Natalie at a restaurant, heads bent close over documents. I think your husband is committing corporate espionage, Sharon said, and I think Natalie Corso is his handler. David, who'd come with me, leaned forward. If Dad's selling company secrets, he's not just cheating on Mom. He's committing federal crimes. Securities fraud, breach of fiduciary duty. We could report him to the SEC. We could, Sharon agreed. But we need proof, and more importantly, we need to make sure Evelyn stays alive long enough to see him prosecuted. Julia ran the tests on the medications. She took 3 pills from my prescription bottle, the one Richard had filled for me, to the hospital lab and asked a colleague to analyze them. She told him she was concerned about a potential medication error. The results came back 2 days later. My blood pressure medication contained 3 times the prescribed dosage of lisinopril, plus a secondary drug called digoxin, a heart medication that in the wrong doses can cause cardiac arrest. He's been poisoning you, Julia said. Her voice was shaking. Slowly, incrementally, so it would look like natural causes, heart failure. At your age, with high blood pressure, no one would question it. I thought about the dizziness, the nausea, the exhaustion I'd felt for months. How long? I asked. Based on these levels, he's probably been tampering with your medication for at least 6 months, maybe longer. 6 months? I remembered Richard's concern when I'd mentioned feeling unwell. His insistence that I rest more. His gentle hand on my back as he guided me to bed. You need to stop taking these immediately, Julia said. I'm prescribing you the correct medication through my hospital pharmacy. Don't let Dad touch them. With regards to the financial investigations, that's where my old skills came back. I might have been out of the workforce for 40 years, but I still knew how to read financial statements. I still understood forensic accounting, and I still had access to our joint bank accounts. Richard had never thought to remove my credentials because I'd always been too trusting to check. I started digging. Over the past 18 months, Richard had transferred nearly $600,000 from our joint accounts into accounts I'd never seen before. The transfers were labeled innocuously: home repairs, investment opportunities, retirement planning. We hadn't done any major home repairs. I would have known. I traced the accounts. They led to a web of LLCs and shell companies, all registered in Delaware. Horizon Capital Holdings, Summit Ventures LLC, and Corso Enterprises. That last one caught my attention. Corso. Natalie's last name. I dug deeper. Corso Enterprises had received multiple wire transfers from Richard's accounts, totaling $340,000. From there, the money split into two directions. One, $150,000 to the Harbor Point condo, the property Richard and Natalie co-owned. Two, $190,000 to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. But there was a third transfer I almost missed. $50,000 paid to something called Redstone Consulting Group. I ran a search. Redstone Consulting was a dummy company linked to several cases of corporate espionage and industrial theft. I called David. I think Dad's been embezzling, I said, and I think he's been using our money to fund illegal business deals with Natalie. David was quiet for a moment. Then, I need you to send me everything you found. Every account number, every transfer, every shell company. This is federal prosecution territory, Mom. If we build this case right, we can bury him. For the plan, we met at Julia's apartment, neutral territory, where Richard wouldn't think to look for us. Sharon Baptiste laid out the situation with military precision. Here's what we know. Richard is poisoning Evelyn. He's embezzled approximately $600,000 from joint accounts. He's engaged in corporate espionage with Natalie Corso. He's taken out a $2 million life insurance policy on Evelyn with himself as sole beneficiary. And he's updated his will to leave everything to Natalie, effectively cutting out his wife and children. Timeline? David asked. Based on the note, he's planning something for their anniversary weekend. That's 2 weeks from now. What's the anniversary? Julia asked. I answered, my voice hollow. 43 years. We're supposed to renew our vows. It was Richard's idea. He said it would be romantic, a ceremony at the house with close friends and family. Sharon and David exchanged a look. He's going to kill you in front of witnesses, make it look like a medical event, heart attack, stroke, something sudden. With your history of blood pressure issues and the doctored medication in your system, no one will question it. Julia stood up, pacing. So we stop him. We go to the police right now. We have the evidence. We don't have enough yet, David interrupted. We have circumstantial evidence and a theory. We need a confession or concrete proof of intent. Otherwise, his lawyers will bury us. He'll claim the insurance policy was standard financial planning. The will is his right. The medication tampering would be nearly impossible to prove beyond reasonable doubt. His defense will say the pharmacy made an error. So what do we do? I asked. Sharon smiled. It was a predator smile. We set a trap, and we let Richard walk right into it. Sharon got a court order for a wiretap on Richard's phone and car based on the evidence of financial fraud. Technically, it was for the embezzlement investigation. Practically, it would capture everything. I started taking the real medication Julia prescribed while pretending to take Richard's pills. Every morning, I'd palm the poisoned pills and flush them later. And I shouldn't let Richard notice I was getting better. That would raise suspicion. So I acted. I'd learned something about performance in 43 years of marriage. I kept up the symptoms, complained of dizziness when he was around, sat down suddenly, pressing my chest to a hand. Once, I even staged a small episode at the grocery store. Nothing dramatic, just enough that the clerk asked if I needed help, and Richard rushed over, all concern. Maybe we should increase your medication, he said in the car, his voice dripping with false worry. Maybe, I agreed weakly. It was the performance of my life. Every morning I'd take his poison pills in front of him, letting him see me swallow. Then I'd excuse myself to the bathroom and spit them out. I kept a log of every pill he gave me, every symptom I pretended to have, every concerned comment he made. Julia monitored my real health daily. My real blood pressure was normalizing. My energy was returning. But Richard only saw what I showed him, a sick wife getting worse right on schedule. "You're declining faster than I expected," he said one night as he stroked my hair as I lay on the couch. The tenderness in his voice made my skin crawl. "But don't worry, I'm taking care of everything." "I'll bet you are," I thought. Step 3, the documentation. David subpoenaed Richard's financial records through a routine audit at Summit Pharmaceuticals. The company was cooperative. They'd been investigating their own leak and were happy to have legal cover. What he found confirmed everything. Richard had been selling confidential drug research to biogenetics through Natalie. The payments were laundered through the shell companies. It was a textbook case of corporate espionage. Step 4, the final piece. We needed Richard to incriminate himself clearly, undeniably. Sharon had an idea. 1 week before the anniversary, Richard was being extraordinarily attentive. He brought me flowers, took me to dinner at Marcillo's, our favorite restaurant, held my hand across the table and talked about our future. He said, "I know I haven't always been the husband you deserved, but I want you to know, Evie, these 43 years have been, well, they've been something. Not wonderful, not the best years of my life, something." I smiled and squeezed his hand. "I'm looking forward to our renewal ceremony. It's going to be perfect. Just family and close friends. Intimate, meaningful." "Who's coming?" "Well, David and Julia, of course. The Hendersons, the Chens. Maybe a few people from work." He paused. "I'd like to invite Natalie Corso. She's been a good colleague, and I know she'd appreciate being part of our celebration." There it was. He wanted his mistress at our vow renewal. The woman he was planning to leave everything to. The woman he was probably going to run away with once I was dead and the insurance money cleared. "Of course," I said. "The more the merrier." Sharon called me 3 days before the anniversary. We got it. The wiretap had picked up a phone call between Richard and Natalie from the night before. I listened to the recording in Sharon's office with David and Julia on either side of me. Richard: "Everything's set for Saturday. The ceremony starts at 4. She'll take her medication that morning. I've already prepared the extra dose. Within an hour of the ceremony, she'll start feeling symptoms, heart palpitations, shortness of breath. We'll call 911, but by the time they arrive..." Natalie: "And you're sure it'll look natural?" Richard: "She's been on heart medication for months. Everyone knows she's had problems. The autopsy will show cardiac arrest due to underlying conditions. No one will question it. And once the insurance pays out..." Natalie: $2 million plus the estate. We can finally be together. No more hiding." Richard, laughing: "43 years I've been waiting for this. God, I should have done it sooner." Natalie: "Better late than never, darling." The recording ended. Julia was crying silently. David's hands were clenched into fists. I felt nothing, just a strange, distant calm. That's our confession, Sharon said. Clear intent, premeditation, conspiracy. With the financial evidence David gathered and the medication tampering Julia documented, we have enough to prosecute. So we go to the police? Julia asked. Not yet, David said. We still have the corporate espionage angle. If we can catch him in the act of transferring documents or money to Natalie, we can add federal charges. That's 20 years minimum. Sharon looked at me. Evelyn, are you up for this? Because what we're about to do is going to require you to be face to face with a man who's planning to murder you, and you're going to have to pretend everything is fine. I thought about 43 years of marriage, of giving up my career, of raising his children, of pressing his suits and making his coffee and organizing his life while he built a separate one with another woman. I thought about the will. She has taken enough. I'm ready, I said. Let's finish this. Saturday, the anniversary day, dawned bright and clear. The kind of perfect spring day that feels like a blessing from the universe. I woke up at 6 a.m. Richard was still asleep beside me, one arm thrown over his face. I studied him in the early light. This man I'd spent most of my life with, tried to find the person I'd fallen in love with at 21. He wasn't there. Maybe he never had been. I got up and showered, put on the cream-colored dress I'd bought for the ceremony. Elegant, simple, the kind of dress you'd wear to renew your vows with the love of your life. Or to your own murder. Richard came downstairs at 7:30. Big day, he said, smiling. How are you feeling, my love? I'm nervous, I admitted. It wasn't a lie. Don't be. It's just us and the people we love. He pulled a pill bottle from his pocket. Don't forget your medication. You'll want to feel your best today. He handed me 2 pills and a glass of water. I looked at them. These were the pills that were supposed to kill me. Poison disguised as care. Thank you, I said. I raised the glass to my lips. Richard watched, and I pretended to swallow. By 2 p.m., the house was decorated beautifully. White roses everywhere, my favorite. Candles on every surface, a small altar set up in the living room where we'd exchange vows. Guests started arriving at 3. The Hendersons, neighbors we'd known for 20 years. The Chins from down the street. David and his wife Michelle arrived together. She looked nervous, probably because this was her first major family event since the wedding. She had no idea what was about to unfold. They'd only been married 6 months, and we agreed we shouldn't burden her with this nightmare. She'd find out everything soon enough. A few of Richard's colleagues from Summit. And at 3:30, Natalie Corso walked through my front door. She was stunning. Mid-40s, auburn hair, elegant in a navy dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She handed me a bottle of wine and smiled warmly. Evelyn, thank you so much for including me. Richard speaks highly of you. I'll bet he does, I thought. Of course, I said. Any friend of Richard's is family. The word family made her smile falter just for a second. Julia appeared at my elbow. Mom, can I talk to you for a minute? We went into the kitchen. David was there, and Sharon, dressed as a catering staff member, complete with black vest and name tag. Everyone's in position, Sharon said quietly.
FBI is outside in an unmarked van. Local PD is 2 blocks away. The house is wired for audio and video. Whatever happens in the next hour, we've got it recorded." "And if something goes wrong?" Julia asked. "It won't," David said, but he squeezed my hand. By 4 p.m., Richard and I stood in front of our guests, facing each other. Our pastor, Father Michael, began the ceremony. "We're gathered here today to witness Richard and Evelyn renew their commitment to one another after 43 years of marriage." I looked at Richard. He was smiling at me with what looked like genuine affection. This man had held my hand through labor when David was born, had sat beside me in the hospital when my mother died, had danced with me at Julia's college graduation. This man was planning to kill me in the next hour. "Richard," Father Michael said, "would you like to say your vows?" Richard took my hands. His were warm and dry. "Evelyn, when I married you 43 years ago, I was a young man who thought he knew everything, but you taught me what real partnership meant. You sacrificed so much for our family, for me." His voice cracked with what sounded like emotion. "And I want you to know that everything I've done, every choice I've made, has been to secure our future, to make sure you're taken care of." Taken care of. Like a problem to be solved, like something to be disposed of efficiently. I felt Julia tense beside me, where she stood as my maid of honor. "Evelyn," Father Michael prompted, "your vows." I looked at Richard, at Natalie, sitting in the 3rd row watching with rapt attention, and I decided to go off script. "Richard," I said slowly, 43 years ago, I promised to love you in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse." I paused. I kept those vows, every single one, even when it cost me everything I'd built before you, even when it meant giving up who I was to become who you needed. His smile flickered. "I trusted you with my life, with our children, with our future. And I want you to know," I squeezed his hands, "that I know exactly who you are now." Confusion crossed his face. "Evie, I know about the life insurance policy. I know about the will. I know about Natalie." I said her name clearly, and heads turned toward her in the audience. "I know about the medication you've been giving me, and I know what you were planning to do today." The room went silent. Richard's face drained of color. "What are you—" "I know everything, Richard. The embezzlement, the corporate espionage, the offshore accounts, all of it." Natalie stood up. "This is insane! Richard, what is she talking about?" "Sit down, Ms. Corso," a voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned. FBI agent Marcus Webb stood there, badge held high. Behind him, 4 more agents filed in. "Richard James Hartwell, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, embezzlement, and corporate espionage. Natalie Rose Corso, you're also under arrest as an accessory to these crimes." Richard just stared at me. You knew?" I've known for 3 weeks, and I've spent every day since gathering evidence to make sure you'd never hurt me or anyone else again. But the medication, you were taking it every day. You watched me. I stopped taking your pills 3 weeks ago. Everything you saw after that was an act. The dizziness, the weakness, the chest pains, all of it. I needed you to think your plan was working so you'd incriminate yourself on the wiretap. The agents moved forward. Richard pulled away from them, his voice rising. Everything I did was for us, to secure our future. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You weren't just planning to leave me, Richard. You wanted me dead, because a divorce would have exposed everything. The embezzlement, the espionage, all of it. I would have fought for my share of the assets, and any forensic accountant reviewing our finances would have found what you'd stolen. A dead wife was cleaner. Tragic, but clean. And you'd get the insurance money as a bonus. Mrs. Hartwell, we need to take them into custody now. Richard looked at our guests, friends who'd watched this whole scene unfold in stunned silence, then back to me. You ruined everything, he hissed. No, I said quietly. You did that yourself. They put him in handcuffs. Natalie was crying, makeup streaming down her face. Richard, tell them this is a mistake. Tell them. But Richard said nothing. He just stared at me with pure hatred as they let him out. 2 hours later, the guests had left, shocked, confused, some in tears. Father Michael had patted my shoulder and said, God sees everything, Evelyn. Justice will be done. I sat in my living room with David and his bewildered wife, Julia, and Sharon. The white roses were still everywhere, a memorial to a marriage that had died long before today. The FBI has everything, Sharon said. The recordings, the financial documents, the testimony from Summit's executives about the espionage. Between state and federal charges, Richard's looking at minimum 30 years. Natalie, probably 20. What about the will? I asked. It's void, David said. Any will made with intent to benefit from a planned murder is automatically invalidated. Everything reverts to the previous will, which leaves the estate split between you, me, and Julia. Julia was crying. Not sad tears, angry ones. I can't believe him. Our whole childhood, he made you give up everything, made you think you needed him. And the whole time, I know, I said. Are you okay, Mom? David asked. Was I? I thought about it. I don't know yet, I admitted. Ask me in a year. 6 months later, Richard's trial was all over the news. Pharmaceutical executive planned wife's murder, screamed the headlines. Summit Pharmaceuticals fired him immediately and cooperated fully with prosecutors. Biogenics severed all ties with Natalie and launched their own internal investigation. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Richard was sentenced to 35 years for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and embezzlement. The federal charges for corporate espionage added another 15 years to be served consecutively. Natalie got 22 years as an accessory to attempted murder and her role in the espionage scheme. I didn't attend the sentencing. David and Julia went in my place.
They told me Richard never looked up, never showed remorse, just sat there, stone-faced, as the judge read his fate. Natalie sobbed through her entire sentencing. Her lawyer tried to argue she'd been manipulated by Richard, that she was a victim too. The judge wasn't buying it. You helped a man plan to murder his wife. You weren't a victim. You were a willing participant in a scheme that valued money over a human life. This court shows no leniency for that. 1 year later, I was sitting in my sunroom, the one Richard and I were supposedly renovating together. I finished it myself. Hired my own contractor, picked my own paint colors, sage green, not the beige Richard would have chosen, installed French doors that open onto the garden. It's mine now, truly mine. The house is mine too. Richard signed over his share as part of a plea deal to avoid some of the federal charges. The life insurance company voided his policy and investigated him for fraud. Our joint accounts were frozen, then released to me once the court confirmed I was the rightful owner. Summit Pharmaceuticals settled a civil suit with me for $1.2 million, compensation for Richard's use of marital assets in his criminal enterprise. They wanted to avoid further scandal. I'm not wealthy, but I'm secure. More importantly, I'm free. Julia stops by every Sunday for coffee. David and his loving wife calls twice a week. They've both been incredible through this. Protective, supportive, never once making me feel like I should have seen the signs earlier or done something differently. You survived, Mom. That's what matters. You saw the truth, and you fought back. Last month, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went back to work. Well, not work exactly. Consulting. A law firm that specializes in elder financial abuse reached out after hearing about my case. They wanted to know if I'd be interested in helping other victims untangle complex financial fraud. You have a unique skill set, the senior partner told me, and a unique perspective. You know what it's like to be dismissed, underestimated. You know how predators operate. We could use someone like you. I thought about it for exactly 30 seconds before I said yes. Now I spend 3 days a week reviewing financial documents for victims of abuse. Mostly women my age who trusted the wrong person with their money and their lives. I help them find hidden accounts, trace fraudulent transfers, build cases against the people who betrayed them. I'm good at it. Better than I expected. Turns out, 40 years of being invisible taught me how to see things other people miss. 18 months after the incident, I got a letter from Richard. It came to David's office. He's still my lawyer, handling the divorce proceedings. Richard sent it there because he doesn't know my new address. I moved 6 months ago to a condo in Cambridge, closer to Julia and her hospital. David called me before he opened it. Do you want to read this, or should I just shred it? I said, read it to me. He did, over the phone, his voice tight with controlled anger. Dear Evelyn, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I've lost the right to call you my wife or ask for your forgiveness. But I need you to understand something. I never stopped loving you. Everything I did, the insurance policy, the financial arrangements, even the relationship with Natalie, it was all because I was trying to build a life where I could finally be happy, where I didn't feel trapped. You were always so strong, Evie, so capable, so certain about everything. And I know you loved me, but I felt like I was drowning in your certainty, like there was no room for me to be anything other than who you needed me to be. Natalie understood that. She let me be myself. She didn't judge or question or try to fix me. I'm not saying what I did was right. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to understand that I was suffocating in our marriage and I didn't know how else to escape. I hope you can find peace. Richard. David finished reading. You want me to respond? No, I said, but I want you to send him something from me. What? A copy of the trial transcript, the part where the prosecutor read his own words back to him, the recording where he laughed about planning my death. I want him to see exactly who he was, not who he's convinced himself he was. David was quiet. Then, Mom, you're terrifying sometimes, in the best way. I'm 68 now. My hair is more silver than brown. I have reading glasses on a chain around my neck like the grandmother David made me to be. Julia chose careers over children, and I respect that. I've started dating. Nothing serious, just coffee here and there with a retired history professor I met at a lecture series. His name is Martin. He makes me laugh. He doesn't make me feel small. Last week, he asked about my marriage, and I gave him the short version. My husband tried to kill me. I had him arrested instead. Martin stirred his coffee thoughtfully. That must have been terrifying. It was, I admitted. But you want to know the most terrifying part? It wasn't the moment I found out he wanted me dead. It was realizing how long I'd been dying anyway. Just slowly, invisibly, one small sacrifice at a time. And now? Now, I'm alive. Actually alive. For the first time in decades. He smiled. Good. You deserve that. Whew. Maybe I do. This story isn't just about me. It's about my children, David and Julia too. My son, who put his legal career on hold for 3 months to build an airtight case against his own father, who sat across from Richard at a deposition and said, "You don't get to call yourself a victim. You don't get to rewrite history and pretend Mom was the problem. I was there. I saw everything, and I choose her." My daughter, who smuggled my medication to a lab and risked her professional reputation to prove it had been tampered with, who stood in court and testified as an expert witness about the effects of long-term poisoning, who looked at her father and said, "You took an oath to do no harm. You broke it. You don't get to practice medicine on your family and call it love." They could have stayed neutral, could have said, "This is between our parents," could have protected their relationship with their father. They didn't. He stopped being our father the moment he decided your life was disposable, Julia told me after the trial. We're not choosing sides. We're choosing what's right. I'm so proud of them, I could burst. People ask me all the time, were there signs? How did I miss it for so long? Here's the truth. There were signs. small ones, tiny inconsistencies I dismissed or explained away because I wanted to believe in my marriage. The way Richard would flinch when I asked about his day, the phone calls he'd take in another room, the business trips that seemed to extend without explanation, the subtle ways he'd undermine my opinions in front of friends. Oh, Evie doesn't really follow politics, or she's not really interested in that. Death by 1,000 cuts. That's what it was. But here's what I've learned. Predators rely on your goodness. They rely on your trust, your loyalty, your unwillingness to believe someone you love could hurt you. Richard didn't just try to kill my body. He spent 43 years killing my spirit, my confidence, my career, my sense of self. By the time he decided to finish the job literally, I was already half gone. The life insurance policy wasn't the beginning. It was the end of a very long process. But I'm not gone. I'm here, and I'm rebuilding. 6 months ago, Natalie's lawyer contacted David. She wanted to speak with me. Said she had information that might help me find closure. I almost said no. Then I thought, why? What can she possibly say that matters? But curiosity won. We met at the prison, a women's facility 2 hours north. Natalie looked different, thinner, no makeup, gray roots showing in her auburn hair. Prison ages everyone. She sat across from me in the visiting room, hands folded on the table. Thank you for coming. I'm not here to forgive you, I said immediately. I know. I'm not asking for that. She took a breath. I wanted you to know that Richard lied to me too. I almost laughed. You're going to tell me you didn't know he was married, that you thought, no, I knew he was married, but he told me you were dying anyway, cancer, that you had maybe a year left and you'd made peace with it. He said you'd even encouraged him to move on with his life, to find happiness. I stared at her. She showed me medical documents, forged, obviously. I didn't know that then. He said the life insurance policy was your idea, that you wanted to make sure he was taken care of after you were gone. And you believed him? I wanted to believe him, because if I believed him, then I wasn't the villain. I was just a woman in love with a man who was losing his wife to a terrible disease. She looked down. I was stupid and selfish. I see that now. You helped him embezzle hundreds of thousands of dollars. You facilitated corporate espionage. You were at my vow renewal ceremony, watching him plan to murder me. I know. Her voice cracked. I know. And I'm not asking you to understand or forgive. I just wanted you to know that he's a liar. He lied to you for 43 years. He lied to me for 2. He'll lie to anyone who gives him the chance. I stood to leave. Mrs. Hartwell? I turned back. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry. I looked at her, this woman who'd been willing to step into my life like I was already dead, who'd helped the man I love plan my murder. I hope you find peace. In 22 years, when you get out, I hope you've learned something about who you choose to believe. I walked out and didn't look back. Here's what I want you to understand. I'm not a hero. I'm not some brave warrior who single-handedly took down a murderous husband. I'm just a woman who got lucky. Lucky that I found the insurance policy when I did. Lucky that I had the skills to recognize financial fraud. Lucky that my children believed me.
lucky that I had time to build a case. Thousands of women don't get that luck. They take the medication their husbands give them and die quietly in their sleep. They trust the financial advice and wake up with nothing. They don't have forensic accounting backgrounds or lawyers' sons or surgeon daughters. They just disappear. That's why I do this work now. Why I spend my days helping other women untangle the financial webs that men like Richard weave. Why I speak at conferences about elder abuse and financial fraud. Because I got out, and I owe it to the women who didn't to make sure their stories are told too. I've been divorced from Richard for almost 3 years. The legal process took forever. He contested everything from prison, trying to hold on to whatever scraps of control he could. But it's done now. Finalized. I'm Evelyn Porter again. Took back my maiden name. Took back my life. Last week, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went to visit Richard in prison. Not because I forgave him, not because I wanted closure or needed to hear him apologize. I went because I wanted him to see me. The real me. Not the exhausted, diminished woman he'd spent 43 years creating, but the woman I am now. Sharp, confident, rebuilt from the ground up. He looked old, 70 years old and already broken by prison life. Gray, hunched, diminished. He sat across from me in the visiting room and said, "Why are you here?" "I wanted to show you something," I said. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo. Me standing in front of a college classroom, teaching a course on forensic accounting. I'd been hired as an adjunct professor at Boston College, my alma mater, where I'd studied 45 years ago before I gave it all up for him. I'm teaching again, consulting on fraud cases, helping other women who married men like you. I swiped to another photo. That's me at a conference last month. I was the keynote speaker. Financial abuse. How to recognize it, document it, and escape it. Richard stared at the phone. "You tried to kill me," I said quietly. Not just with poison, but with 43 years of slowly erasing who I was, making me small, making me dependent, making me invisible. "Evelyn, let me finish." My voice was steady. "You thought if you could just get rid of my body, you'd be free. But the truth is, I was already gone. I'd been gone for years. I just didn't realize it until I found that insurance policy." He looked up at me, and for the first time since I had arrived, I saw something human in his eyes. Regret, maybe. Or just exhaustion. "But here's the thing, Richard. I came back. I rebuilt myself from nothing, from less than nothing, and now I'm more alive than I ever was with you." "What do you want from me?" he asked. "You want me to say, I'm sorry? That I regret it? Fine, I'm sorry. I regret everything. I don't want your apology. I don't need it. I came here to tell you that you failed. You tried to erase me, and instead, you erased yourself. You're the one who's gone now, forgotten, irrelevant." I stood to leave. "Evelyn," I turned back one last time. "Were you ever really happy?" he asked. "With me?" I thought about it. 43 years of marriage, 2 children, thousands of dinners and conversations and moments that made up a life. Parts of it, I said honestly.
the parts where I forgot to notice you were killing me. I walked out. I didn't cry, didn't feel anger or sadness or even satisfaction. I just felt free. Today is my 68th birthday. Julia threw me a party at her apartment. Just family and a few close friends. Martin came bearing a chocolate cake and terrible jokes. David gave me a first edition of Agatha Christie's, and then there were none. Because, as he said, you've always had a thing for justice. David and Michelle have 2 children now. Twin boys, age 2. Watching David be the father he is, patient and present and devoted, makes me realize how much he learned from watching Richard fail at it. We laughed, we ate cake, we told stories. At one point, Julia raised her glass. To Mom, the strongest person I know. To Mom, everyone echoed. But here's the secret. I'm not strong. Or maybe I am, but not in the way people think. I'm strong because I had no choice. I'm strong because the alternative was death, literal or metaphorical, but death either way. I'm strong because I decided that I wanted to live more than I wanted to keep pretending. That's all strength really is. Choosing life over comfort. Choosing truth over illusion. Choosing yourself over the story someone else wrote for you. Richard tried to write my ending. He failed. Now, I'm writing my own. And it's just beginning. If you're listening to this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you feel small or invisible, or like you're slowly disappearing in your own life, please hear me. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. You are not too sensitive. Trust your instincts, document everything, and reach out to someone you trust. And remember, it's never too late to choose yourself. I was 64 when I found out my husband was trying to kill me. 64 when I had to rebuild my entire life. If I can do it, so can you. You are stronger than you know. You are more capable than they've told you. You are worth saving. Choose life. Choose truth. Choose yourself. The rest will follow. I died twice in my lifetime. The first time was on paper. The second time was in his will. But I came back. And this time, I'm staying. Thank you for listening. Evelyn Porter, age 68, survivor.